day 3 of this third test match. So much has already happened in 2 days. It's a day that India will be looking to stamp their authority further en route to what they hope would be a test pulled back in this 5-match series. This is our pre-match show for the third day's play on ESPN Cricinfo Match Day. Delighted to welcome back after a few days off VVS Lakshman, who spent 2 tests lamenting, depressed about India's performance, and now joins us after India's finest day in the series.
Yeah, absolutely, and really pleased with the way they came back into this series, because and that's not the first time, this is not going to be the last time, because even in South Africa, after losing the first 2 matches, they bounced back in the third test match on a difficult track, went on to win that match. So I think that also shows the character within the team, because good teams bounce back when they face adversity. There's no doubt they didn't play to their potential in the first 2 games, but they addressed the issues, they changed the players who were not performing, and credit to them that now they are in a position of dominance where they can finish off this test match ASAP.
On the other hand, Steve Harmison, England wouldn't have been in as a hurry as India to get out of bed this morning. Were you?
No, I was. I think the first thing I'd have been looking at to see if Noah was building his ark and thinking if the cloud and the rain was coming. But I think the cloud's fine. I think the sun shines out, and unfortunately, England have got some hard work to do. They've got some hard work to do on character. They've got some hard work to do, definitely on technique. And there's a few people playing for their places. Not as in I'd be too critical in the way that India have gone and dropping players after the first 2 test matches. But there'll be a few people in that England side looking over the shoulder and thinking, right, if I don't get runs in the second innings, next test match, in the 4th test match, if I don't get runs there, my place could be up on offer for what is a difficult winter in the subcontinent and in the West Indies.
I'd love to ask you if one of those people is Alistair Cook, but I will save that for a little while later on the show. What I will do is remind you of where we stand on day 3. What a day India had. You could not have asked for a better day for Virat Kohli's men. 2-0 down into the series, losing the toss on day 1. And as it turns out, in spite of being bowled out quickly in their first innings on the second morning, an extraordinary middle session where England were bowled out, albeit in an extended session, 10 wickets for 115 runs, half of those to Hardik Pandya, who's suddenly on the top of the world. And then in response, after Shikhar Dhawan and KL Rahul gave them a good start for the second time in this test, a lead of 168 has been extended to 292. So you'd think now only one result is possible, or rather only one team can win this. The question is, you know, how do India go about it? There's so much time in this test match, so there should be no hurry.
I think first India should bat out, because there's a lot of time. As you mentioned, this is just the 3rd day, and it's a great opportunity for some of the players, especially the way Pujara is batted in both the innings. Yeah, he got some runs last night, but the way he's approached this innings, it should be very encouraging. And if they can get a formidable lead, you know, where they bat out England team out of this test match, because in cricket, not only test cricket, miracles have happened in the past, you know, and it's known as a game of uncertainty, and when you're playing for your country, there's a lot of pride at stake, you know. So I think India should take a lead of 500 runs and then can put pressure on the English batsmen who are struggling at the moment.
Yeah, you're living proof that miracles happen, VVS, but off late teams don't chase 400. It's just, you don't see it.
Yeah, chasing 400, I think even 300 is a difficult task, especially keeping in mind the conditions which are on offer at Trent Bridge. But having said that, you've got players, because someone like Alistair Cook is struggling, and maybe there's question mark about his place. And when that happened in the Ashes, he came up with a double 100 at MCG. So you never know, because English batsmen over-rely on Alistair Cook, Joe Root. The best way for India to win this test match comfortably is make sure that they bat till tea. Not really think about the score, just bat for time, and that gives an opportunity for Pujara to get a big score. That gives an opportunity to Ajinkya Rahane to probably get 100, and also that will help them to get confidence going into the 4th test. It's not only about this test match, it's about totally stamping their authority on English team, so that the next 2 test matches also India can play with a lot of freedom.
It's a nice conversation to have with VVS and Steve Harmison over the next 15-20 minutes about individual players and what they can salvage from this test match. Assuming a miracle does not happen, you expect this result inevitably to go India's way and the series to go 2-1 into Southampton. But we can speak on individuals from both sides. Before that, it was an individual's day that he will remember and he will remind the world for a long, long time. Here's Hardik Pandya, who raced through to the press conference at the end of day 2.
First of all, I don't play for them. They are getting paid for saying things which I don't even want to know, and I don't even care of what they say. And I play for my country, sir. I don't care what they say. It's their job to say it, and yeah, it's my job to play for my country, and I'm doing the right thing. My team is happy with me. Nothing else matters. Sir, the problem with this, what happens? They compare, yes, right, but all of a sudden when something goes wrong, they're like, he's not that. I never wanted to be Kapil Dev. Let me be Hardik Pandya. I'm good at it, Hardik Pandya. I've reached here till now. I've played 40 ODIs and now 10 test matches being Hardik Pandya, not Kapil Dev. So they are great at their era. Let me be Hardik Pandya. Let's stop comparing me with anyone. I'll be happy if you don't.
Oh, he can't be happier than a 5-wicket haul in 29 balls, which is the second quickest in terms of balls taken for India in tests for 5 wickets. Harbhajan Singh and Maninder Singh, the two spinners that surround him. That's some achievement to be there, Hardik Pandya. Melinda Farrell was part of that barrage of reporters that was asking those uncomfortable questions to Hardik Pandya. And I think, Mel, you on one hand said that it was quite refreshing to see someone so straightforward. Tell me what it was like in the press conference after Hardik Pandya's day at Nottingham.
Yeah, well, of course, that first question was in response to being asked about the critics. I mean, he didn't quite walk in there with a sign saying, yeah, Mikey, talk nah, but we know that Mikey Holding had been critical along with quite a few others about Hardik Pandya, and I guess really he answered them on the field. I thought it was quite refreshing to see someone come out in a press conference and actually be quite strong about that. And the Kapil Dev references as well have obviously annoyed him somewhat. And I really can't complain about any sportsman who comes out, particularly any cricketer who comes out and talks about themselves in the third person like that. I think there should be a lot more of it. But he sort of took that moment and he was pretty relaxed in there. I thought it was pretty good to see he's answered his critics. Some players respond to that, and it's a sign of a good player. If they're not really having the performance that they want to have, then they get that criticism, and it can sometimes fire them up. The conditions were good for him yesterday, and he made the most of it. But you know what? That's what good players do. When the conditions are there for them, they capitalise on them. And when England are so obligingly giving up their wickets as well, then all the better for him.
Well, and speaking of conditions, it looks nice over there ahead of day 3. Yesterday, you were struggling under an umbrella when we started this show. Looks a lot better. Just give me a quick update on that. And at the same time, Steve talks about individual players for England now needing to make this count. Joss Buttler was at the end of day press conference yesterday. Could very well be one of those players that England are looking at, barring that little swashbuckling 30-odd that he got in the first innings. He's not been able to get too many runs this series. Just thoughts on what England's mood and Joss Buttler's mood was like?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is quite a lot brighter today, and the sun's sort of struggling to peep out through the clouds. So cloud around today, but there's not really much chance of rain in the forecast. Joss Buttler was really interesting in that press conference because obviously he's being asked about the collapses. 3 times in the past 2 years, England have been bowled out in a session, and that hadn't happened for decades beforehand. Not only that, they've lost their first 3 wickets for less than 100 on so many occasions now. But he was almost pleading. He was like saying, it's not for want of trying. It's not for want of trying, and it's all about hard work. And there's no magic cure, and it is hard. But it just keeps coming back to this every time. We have this with England. You know, every summer they've been quite inconsistent at home. They'll have a really big win, and then they'll be absolutely smashed. I mean, they were smashed here by nearly 300 runs by South Africa, and no one seems to have that answer, and you can see the frustration, I think, in their eyes. You also have to wonder about the personnel. You do have to wonder that. I mean, they've got a couple of openers who are out of form. They've got a debutant batting at number 4. If Joe Root's not able to sort of draw a line in the sand there, they've not got much protection at the moment, and the lower order has bailed them out a number of times, but you've got their second best batsman in Johnny Bairstow batting way down the order as keeper. So there are some people even saying, mate, look, should Joss Buttler take the gloves and push Johnny Bairstow up the order? It all seems the best technique in some ways against a moving ball, you could argue, might be Chris Woakes. and he's obviously batting down there below. So not only is it the personnel, I guess you wonder about where they're actually coming out in that batting lineup, but while there's little protection and little defence at the top, and the ability to just really play out a session and defend and get past that tricky 15 to 30 30 over period with the swinging ball, I think it's not the last time we'll see this collapse from England.
Okay, hang on with me for another moment, Mel. I'm going to also ask you about injury news on our Ashwin, but since you've raised the point of all these questions around England, let me go straight to Steve Harmison to see how many answers he's got. It's not been for a lack of personnel either, Steve. We've spoken a number of times of how many people have tried to partner Alistair Cook and they've not been able to find someone. Now Alistair Cook also finds himself struggling for runs. Mel's brought the point of Johnny Bairstow batting too low. There's a new selection panel. Lots of things that we're raising about England that we wouldn't ideally after the way the first two tests went. But that's, like Mel said, how England have been. They've been great a couple of tests and then they've been woeful the next.
I totally agree. There have had passages where they have been great, and then you just think it's a completely different team. Same personnel, but completely different team. And we're talking about the personnel. There was a lot of eyebrows raised. Ollie Pope going at 4. Has that worked? I'm not criticising the 20-year-old kid in Test match cricket. He needs to be given a chance. Bairstow wants to keep wicket, so if he wants to keep wicket, don't think he can keep bat at number 4. But on the other hand, should he be told he's not keeping wicket? Talking about, Melinda, I know she mentioned there, Chris Folkes having a good technique. If we're looking at number 8, batting at number 4 or number 5 in Test cricket, the selectors have picked the complete wrong side. In the getting off to a great start, we've not had it. Since Jonathan Trott, Andrew Strauss and Ian Bell left the England cricket team, England's inability to absorb the ball at the top of the order, to let our explosive players down the order get us to a position of strength, which is 400 first innings or 450 first innings, to set a test match up. We haven't had that since them proper test players have retired. And it just seems whenever we get into trouble, whenever that wall comes in front of you, and you either go through it, England try and go over it, but sometimes they don't even go round it. It just stands them straight in the face, and they come backwards, and that's when the water comes in. And we've seen 3 times in the last 12 or 18 months we've been bowled out in a session. That's alarm bells on. Maybe softness in our mentality when it comes to being technique into trouble, and Mel's right. This will happen again. Okay. If we continue having this mindset, this will happen again.
It seems like the transition thing that a lot of teams are almost struggling with. One of the teams we thought was India after you guys went. There seemed to be enough batsmen who staked a claim to be in that team. But we've had this conversation for Sri Lanka after Mahela and Sangha. We've had this conversation for England. I mean, Steve's having it for England. We've had it for South Africa after Graham Smith and Jack Callis. It's hard for a team, but for England, you don't expect it with England though.
Yeah, I think I'm not surprised. And what Steve mentioned there was soft mindset. Soft mindset comes when your defensive skills are not good enough. And if you see since 2015, you mentioned all the players, the great players who contributed a lot in Test match cricket for England, where before 2015 World Cup, what has happened? The mindset changed, the approach to T20 and 50 over changed. So the domestic structure, invariably the players who are in domestic structure were now preparing themselves to do well in T20 and ODIs. So once you do that, there is an issue as far as temperament is concerned, and whenever the conditions are challenging, the first thing which is challenged is your thought process. It's happening with some of the Indian batsmen in the first 2 games. It happened with England, not only in this test match, but throughout the series. Barring Joe Root, Bairstow, to some extent Chris Folkes at Lords, none of the other batsmen are in good touch. Yes, they've won the 2 matches, but none of the batsmen look convincing.
Including Alistair Cook.
Alistair Cook.
Yeah.
So that's something of a concern for England, because it's not in India, it's not in Bangladesh, it's not in Sri Lanka where the ball is turning. It's in English conditions where the ball is swinging.
Yes.
So I think the mindset has changed. The approach while growing up now, even for an English player, is more to be a good T20 player, a good ODI player. And once that happens, the defensive technique will be affected. And once your defensive technique is affected, you don't know how to when a challenge is posed to you in conditions where it's helpful to bowlers, you don't know how to approach that challenge. And that's why you see getting out in one session. You saw India getting out in 35 overs, 38 overs. The reason for that is how to weather that storm.
Yeah.
And that comes with mindset. It's not necessary to be flamboyant. It's about fighting it out. Play 30 overs, play with patience, and once you cross that storm, you can capitalize. And that's proper test match cricketing mindset or batting mindset.
In which case, Steve, just very quickly before we move to break, it seems like they have to stick with Alistair Cook in spite of the problems he has. The fact that there are so many more problems around him, the last thing they want to do to Joe Root is get rid of the most experienced man in the team.
Yeah, and you've got to be careful when the people talk about dropping Alistair Cook. You don't drop Alistair Cook. He retires. A man that's played 160 odd test matches doesn't get dropped. He retires, and that's the thing they've got to be careful of. On the other hand, yeah, I look at Alistair Cook. He's played, I think, 5 innings so far in this series. He's had 3 absolute beauties. Where you would say, as an opening batsman, you get a good ball. He's actually had two absolute beauties off an off spinner in Ashwin. The 2 balls he got off Ashwin were fantastic, and he got a good one off Sharma. I think at Lords. Yesterday, he didn't have to play at the one yesterday. He'd be disappointed with that shot. So you have to put it in context. He has getting some good balls. The problem is, the people that are batting with him, and at number, up until Joe Root went to number 3, England have been consistently 20 for 2, 20 for 3, and that's not good enough for any international cricket team, let alone England.
All right. Well, day 1 pre-show, all the talk around India's batting troubles and personnel. Day 3, we're talking all about England and who needs to change and whatnot. Jos Buttler was a left field selection when he was brought back to the Test side just after the IPL. He did speak, like Mel Farrell pointed out, at the end of England's dismal day yesterday at Trent Bridge.
Obviously not if it keeps happening. So I think it comes down to guys working hard, being disciplined, practice, all of the above. I think it's hard. It's not easy. It's not meant to be easy. And as we've seen, Test cricket tests people and individuals and teams in tough ways. So it takes a lot of character for us to come back from tough situations like this. And rightly, when people, say it's been happening too often, which it has. So guys have got to improve, and we know that as a side. And to get to where we want to go, we need to eradicate these collapses. Throughout this series so far, when we've had some excellent conditions to bowl in as well, it's been tough for the batters, and obviously that when you get on that momentum as well, it can. When we've been bowling, it felt like we're going to take a wicket every ball. So it's comes down to how can you wrestle back the initiative. I think a couple of ways. Maybe it's a counter-attacking style or something, or someone trying to sit in and be a bit of a limpet for an hour and ride that session out. But obviously we weren't good enough to do that today, and the guys are obviously disappointed with that.
Well, we've spoken of this in the show. The last 3 occasions now in 2 years that England have lost 10 wickets in a session. Yes, it was a Bunsen burner in Mirpur when they were dismissed for 64, and then against New Zealand in Auckland where the ball was doing a bit. But the fact remains, it's happened 3 times in 2 years, and it didn't happen a long time before that, as Mel Farrell pointed out. Panic at times can spread when you've lost a few, and now that England have this stat at the back of their mind. So how do you arrest that in some ways? You spoke about mental toughness. This is a reasonably experienced middle order. They've got a couple of guys up that are still fighting for their place, but in Bairstow, in Stokes, Joe Root, who bats at 4 now. How do you arrest the fall of wickets happening in a cluster?
I think by having a partnership. And partnership, not necessarily partnership in the form of runs, partnership in the form of time, and that is so important, because when it's challenging, it's the 2 batsmen out there in the middle who has to face the challenge. It's not the guys who are in the dressing room who are going to come next. So it's just about showing that fighting spirit. And once you have a partnership, invariably the bowlers who are in good rhythm can bowl that spell, and then you get into the next bowler who may not get that spell, and then you capitalize on it. And that's what the beauty of batting in Test match cricket is. There will be a time in a day when the bowlers are on top of you, and you have to be patient. And the moment the bowlers loses rhythm or loses his patience, then you capitalize as a batsman. So it's all a mind game rather than the skill game. But coming back is only if you have the defensive technique or the belief in your defensive technique, then you can counter a good bowler or bowlers who are bowling in pair with good rhythm and posing a lot of tough questions to you as a batsman.
And defensive technique is something every team is having some struggles with.
Yeah, and it's purely because of the shorter version of the game, because of the way the franchise cricket has come up, the way everyone wants to be recognized as a good T20 player.
Or an all-format player.
All format players is something which is very rare now, and that's why we go back to the players like Kane Williamson, Virat Kohli, Joe Root, or Steve Smith, maybe David Warner. But apart from these five, I don't see all format players.
Okay, well, fascinating chat about batsmanship and how to get things right with the defensive technique. More from VVS Lakshman and Steve Harmison on the other side of the break. Stay with us on ESPN Cricinfo Match Day as we build up to the first session of play on day 3.
Catch the best of the England-India series on ESPN Cricinfo. Match highlights, clips and the best moments.
Good to still have you on ESPN Cricinfo Match Day. We are building up to the first session of the third day of this third test between England and India. India in a commanding position. It will be their batsmen that will resume, but they did spend a large part of yesterday's excellent day for them in the field without one of their key bowlers, and that's Ashwin. The fact that they didn't need him is again testament to how good they were as a bowling unit. But Melinda Farrell still with us from Trent Bridge. Mel, what's the latest? We believe he spent a large part of the day out off the field because of some sort of stiffness in his hip. Is there an update on Ashwin?
Yeah, he was pretty much limping around, looking very uncomfortable, hobbling around for quite a bit before he came off the field for about an hour and 10 minutes. And in that time, he actually ended up going over to the indoor nets for a bit as well, maybe just to try and loosen up or work through whatever that stiffness was. And he did come out on the field again, but overnight, apparently the physios have worked their magic, and this morning I've been told that he is actually fit. So should India require his services with the bat, at the moment he's been one of India's best batsmen or most impressive batsmen through this series in some ways. But with the ball, he's also been devastating for them at times. So they'll be very, very happy to know that he will be out there fit and firing, particularly when it comes to bowling out England in the last innings.
Yeah, it's amazing how you don't need your bat. Everyone clicks together when you're on top in a test match. So maybe Ashwin with the bat won't be needed, but could play a role with the ball in the fourth innings. Looking at Adil Rashid getting some turn. Many thanks, Melinda Farrell, for all your thoughts outside Trent Bridge. Shouldn't be long before we chat with you again. Right, looking ahead now to the day's play. Fact, India in a commanding position, VVS, but individuals would like to make this count. Cheteshwar Pujara in and out, insecure perhaps about his place. Sunil Gavaskar mentioning just before play on day 3 that he would have liked KL Rahul and Shikhar Dhawan to make the most of this opportunity. You want to make this 100 as a batsman.
Yeah, very important, especially when you had 2 bad test matches, and in England or in challenging conditions, if you get a start, invariably you want to convert that into a big score, not only for yourself, but also for the players or the batsmen to follow. And when you get an opportunity, if you make it a big score, it will just add to the confidence of the entire group. But I thought they were both proactive, Shikhar Dhawan and KL Rahul. I still feel KL Rahul is playing with a cluttered mind. There was change in his technique, the way he used to shuffle in the first two games. There was drastic change in the way he shuffled in the Nottingham in both the innings. But having said that, he's still not got his game plan right at the start of his innings. He's playing too many shots, more than what an opener should do. But at least they were positive, and that was really good to see. But Pujara, for me, was a real delight, and for him to convert this into a big score will not only sort of settle down his nerves, or if there is any insecurity, I think all the questions will be answered. And him with Virat Kohli, the morning session will be very crucial. Both experienced players, if they can get through the morning session, then England will be really tired, and they will give a lot of loose deliveries on which the rest of the batsmen can capitalize on.
Steve, it's been so easy for England's bowlers in these two tests so far. Effectively, bowling 5 days worth of test cricket. The fact of managing his bowlers hasn't even occurred to Joe Root, or he didn't need to. There's already some talk of Broad and Anderson perhaps being rested for the Sri Lanka series. This could be the kind of day where England could really make India could really make England toil. I don't want to get ahead of myself because we could see 7 wickets fall in the first session. But is that at the back of Joe Root's mind, how to manage his bowlers?
I think he'd be looking basically in the first hour to try and get as many wickets as he possibly can, and then after that he then has to look at damage limitations when it comes to how many runs that India are going to get from a game plan. If I was Virat Kohli and the next Test match is 3 days away, then I'd be batting for as long as I possibly could to keep Broad and Anderson out in the field. But there is a week off between these next 2 Test matches, so really there's not much goodness coming out of that. Joe Root, he has to go back to Broad and Anderson because they're his best 2 bowlers, and the way that they've gone. You can't look too far forward. Yes, you might look at Southampton because it's going to be 2-1 in this series when it get there. But having a look at Sri Lanka, that's not an issue. But yeah, from an Indian point of view, the longer Pujara bats and the way he bats, the more threat English bowlers are going to, the null effective English bowlers are going to be throughout the course of the day. Because if Pujara is still there at lunchtime, that means Broad and Anderson are going to have to bowl a second and third spell after lunch. And you've seen the workload they've had so far. It's going to be pretty tough on them.
All right, many thanks, Stephen Harmison. Get your thoughts at lunchtime after we see this first session. A nice little time for good time for Hardik Pandya, Rishabh Pant, guys in the middle order, whenever they get their chance to actually come out and play with the cushion of runs and play with England behind in the Test match. This could be a very good.
Yeah, I think if you're in the Indian dressing room and if you're talking about the management, they don't want Hardik Pandya or Rishabh Pant to be even bad today. They want Pujara to get a big score, Virat Kohli to get a big score, Ajinkya Rahane, the batsman, to follow to get a big score, and then if at all the lead is 500 runs, then probably look to declare. Indian team management, I personally wouldn't want Hardik Pandya.
There should be the appetite to make 170 to 180.
Exactly, and that's what the opportunity is there, and they know that they had a tough 2 Test matches. This is a time to capitalize on the opportunity and make it big, make it count.
All right. Well, this is the opportunity then. Thank you, VVS Lakshman. Thank you, Stephen Harmison. Get their thoughts at lunchtime on day 3. Don't rule out things completely stunning us. It may not be one-way traffic for India, but for the sake of the test, let's hope that things get exciting in this morning session. Join us for the lunchtime show then on ESPN Cricinfo Matchday. Download the ESPN Cricinfo mobile app, and we'll see how things go with India resuming with a lead of 292.